Socrates. Socrates is often regarded as the father of Western philosophy, yet he never authored any texts. Our knowledge of his teachings comes primarily from his student, Plato, who recorded them in the form of dialogues. Socrates is well known for introducing the concepts of the Socratic method and Socratic irony. The Socratic method unfolds through dialogue, using brief questions and answers, where Socrates and his conversational partners explore various aspects of a topic or abstract concept, often reaching a point where they are unable to define what they thought they knew. Socrates would act as though he was unaware of the subject being discussed to expose the flaws in his companion's arguments. This technique is referred to as Socratic irony. Socrates' theory of virtue asserts that all virtues are essentially unified, as they represent a type of knowledge. In his view, people fail to act virtuously because they lack understanding. This idea is also behind his famous saying, "No one sins willingly." One of his most quoted statements is, "I know that I know nothing." Plato is renowned for his theory of forms, which challenges the reality of the material world, considering it merely an imperfect reflection of the true world. While we may encounter numerous examples of individual trees, each one is merely a copy of the ideal form of a tree, which represents the perfect, unchanging essence of what defines a tree. This concept is often illustrated through Plato's allegory of the cave, where he describes people who have spent their entire lives chained inside a cave, watching shadows on a wall. These shadows, cast by objects passing in front of a fire behind them, are all they know of reality. The shadows symbolize the limited perception of reality we experience through our senses, while the objects by the fire represent the true forms, which we can only grasp through reason. Aristotle. For Plato, forms exist independently of the things that imitate them. Aristotle, on the other hand, believed that forms are present in individual objects rather than existing separately. While Plato argued that some forms, like the concept of good, might not be part of any physical thing, Aristotle disagreed, claiming that all forms must manifest in some physical entity at some point. Aristotle also held that forms exist within the objects they represent, unlike Plato, who suggested that forms exist apart from the physical world. For instance, Aristotle believed the form of an apple is part of each apple itself, rather than existing in a separate realm. This idea is known as immanent realism. Aristotle also proposed that the world is composed of 5 fundamental elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the last of which he believed was present throughout the universe and made up the stars and celestial bodies. Epicurus believed that the aim of philosophy was to help people lead happy, peaceful lives by eliminating fear and pain. He saw the fear of death as one of the greatest obstacles to happiness, and it was, in his view, the very reason humans invented philosophy in the first place. To alleviate this fear, he argued that death should not be feared because as long as we are alive, death does not exist, and when death occurs, we no longer exist. Epicurus believed the universe was made up of 2 things: matter and void. Matter consists of indivisible atoms that possess unchangeable qualities like size, shape, and weight. He reasoned that since the universe is made of atoms that cannot change, the universe itself will continue to persist. According to Epicurus, while there is a finite variety of atoms, there is an infinite supply of them and an infinite amount of void. This leads to the existence of infinite worlds. He also argued that sensory experiences depend on atoms, as all objects constantly release particles that interact with observers. These particles produce sensations like sight, smell, and sound. Even though the particles themselves do not possess the qualities that we perceive, the way they are emitted causes us to experience sensations. For instance, red particles are not inherently red, but they interact with us in such a way that we perceive the color red. Because of this reliance on the senses, Epicurus is often considered an empiricist. Pythagoras, a mathematician, believed that the universe could be understood through numbers and their relationships. His followers, the Pythagoreans, sought out abstract principles, which laid the groundwork for Greek idealist philosophy. They also promoted the belief in the immortality of the soul and reincarnation. One of the most well-known contributions of Pythagorean thought is the Pythagorean theorem. Diogenes was a founder of cynicism, a philosophy that rejected the pursuit of wealth, power, fame, and other societal desires, arguing that true happiness comes from virtue. According to cynicism, happiness is achieved by living in harmony with nature, guided by reason, and adopting a simple, shameless lifestyle free from societal expectations. Cynics embraced minimalism, and Diogenes himself lived with only a cloak, a staff, and a small bag. He was known for disregarding social norms, even going so far as to urinate, defecate, and engage in acts of self-love in public without concern for others' opinions. Cynics are also credited with developing the idea of cosmopolitanism,